defines a generation. Music is a soundtrack of revolution. Music is a soundtrack of movement. Music is a soundtrack of cause. There is an intersection of politics and pop culture that you didn't even know existed. There's some boy, some girl sitting in a cubicle along K Street, somewhere in DC. A boy, a girl sitting in a cubicle along a hill with a Capitol with a dome who has single-handedly decided what you wore today. Whoa.
Mike Muse is an industrial engineer, a music executive, a political architect. He breaks down the intersection of politics and pop culture. This is the Mike Muse Show.
What's up, world? It's your boy, Mike Muse. Welcome to the conversation of the Mike Muse Show. I am so excited to be in conversation with you all. A happy Sunday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend. Thank you guys so much for rocking with me yesterday with the town hall warfare. It got such a great response, and it seemed like you guys were equally moved about the conversation as I was watching the movie. I cannot wait for you guys to see this movie. It is going to be powerful. Tell me what you've been up to this weekend. I would love to know what you're into. Hit me up at I am Mike Muse, MU, at S as in Sam, E on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. It's been a great weekend for me, aside from watching all the March Madness, and it is maddening. So we'll talk about that a little bit more next week. But with that being said, I'm catching up with some reading. So I've been excited just to be able to sit on my couch in the corner, have some coffee, and read. I haven't done that in a while. I'm constantly reading all the time, but just to read for enjoyment felt good. It was very relaxing. But because it was a crazy week that was the week that was, as they say. It was seismic, not just in policy and not just in political theater, but in impact, real impact for Americans, everyday Americans, and not just everyday Americans, and also too for our global society. We begin with President Trump, which he has dubbed Liberation Day earlier this week. On the surface, it may sound like a rallying cry for independence. I think many of us were confused about what he was actually trying to say regarding Independence Day. But the global markets, to small business owners, to average Americans watching their 401k plans, Liberation Day was more like a financial earthquake. It was unreal watching it unfold, one in real time, watching the president deliver his speech. And then when you saw him hold up the poster board of these numbers that just seem so arbitrary. And then when you got a chance to learn about how they came up with it, the math formulas didn't make any sense whatsoever. One thing that he really got to, that he was trying to justify these percentage points, was a trade deficit. And the trade deficit is when we import more from a country more than they export. But all trade deficits aren't made equal with different countries. Some countries just don't have the economic means to buy lots of American exports. So they just can't afford it. But we actually have a lot of our products made in those countries at a cheaper rate, so that it's cheaper for the American consumer. So that's why we are importing a lot of their goods to our countries. And so that's an example of why all trade deficits aren't equal for every country. And so this is the danger of when you take a broad stroke approach to policy, in particular tariffs policy, without actually understanding and having the nuance be reflected in why you did it. Trump announced sweeping new tariffs this week targeted at China, but it was felt everywhere. And by everywhere, I mean that he's going to apply a 10% tariff to every single country. The S&P and the markets, the Dow Jones, they reacted. We closed on Friday with the S&P 500 dropping at 4.8%. marking it the worst single-day decline since the economy was shattered by the pandemic back in 2020. The Dow fell a staggering almost 1,700 points, and the NASDAQ down 6%. These aren't just numbers on the screen, folks. This is the heartbeat of our economy flatlining, even if just temporary. President Trump has often said that he expects that this is going to be hard in the short term for Americans, but I want to dig into that line a little bit. But at what cost? Is this what individuals who voted for President Trump signed up for? Even if people didn't vote for President Trump is supposed to be a president for all Americans, and the idea that you would expect Americans to go through hardship in order for this greater good, and you would want Americans to make the sacrifice on behalf of the greater good, that just doesn't square with me, because of the fact of the inconsistency of these tariffs, right? When President Trump first wrote out the tariffs were all about Canada and Mexico stopping immigration and fentanyl. Well, as I've always mentioned to you, Canada only brings in less than 1% of fentanyl, right? And so, and immigration is more of a comprehensive immigration reform that needs to happen with Congress support. So that was the original idea of having the tariffs. I'm not saying tariffs are bad. American presidents use tariffs all the time, right? It's part of the toolkit, but it's very specific use. And generally, tariffs are used as a way to stabilize a particular business sector here in America that is getting outperformed by its foreign competitors. So the idea of placing a tariffs on that foreign competitor's good is so that American business sector can be boosted, right? And so they have a competitive advantage. That's really what tariffs are for. But when you unilaterally use tariffs as policy and as negotiations and as leverage, there is no benchmark, there is no barometer. And what President Trump is not indicating to us is that what is the benchmark that he needs to be satisfied from these countries in order for these tariffs to be resolved. There isn't. And so when you don't have any goal markers put in place, well, President Trump has said that unless there's beautiful deals to be made, but what is a beautiful deal, right? That's so arbitrary, right? That's so relative. And so is it just a feeling that he gets when he wakes up in the morning about he feels like that was a good deal that he's getting? And that's what I mean by asking Americans to sacrifice in the short term based upon a feeling or based upon relativity or based upon this arbitrary benchmark that he hasn't informed anyone of what it is. That is a challenge that I can't square. I don't have an issue with the president using tariffs, but tariffs have to be used strategically. It can't be used categorically, and you can't do it all at one time to every single country. And also, too, not expect a retaliatory trade to come back, retaliatory trade tariffs to be put on America in response to which exactly is what China did. Because one thing, markets crave one thing, and that is certainty. What tariffs represents, especially sudden, sweeping ones, is the opposite. Tariffs introduce friction. They complicate supply chains. They inject volatility into an already uncertain economic conditions. Businesses, large and small, pause their spendings and they reevaluate. They wonder, what will my product cost to make next week, next month? Will my customers pay more or walk away entirely? I use this really great example on Sway in the Morning this week when I discussed the idea, because look, everything is kind of arbitrary sometimes how we talk about these things, right? Agriculture, some people may not have a farm or know a farmer, so you may not know how it can impact you. Everyone isn't technically buying steel and aluminum, although, when we do make purchases, steel and aluminum are in there, particularly in our homes. So some people may not be able to really grasp what this means. But what I do know is we all have had experiences with like going and grabbing a smoothie, right? We've all had a smoothie at one point in our lives. So think if you're a smoothie, you own a business that sells smoothies, right? and let's just use these tariffs. Let's use avocados from Mexico. Well, in one of your smoothies, avocado is the main ingredient, and if that's a popular smoothie, you need the avocados. But with the way that tariffs are going in Mexico and the inconsistency of the tariffs, I'm going to make up some numbers here, folks. Don't quote me, but this is just for conversation purposes to exaggerate the point. If now all of a sudden, when I got the avocados, it used to cost me $2 to order the avocados in bulk. Now it's costing me $50 to use the avocados in bulk. How does that impact how much I charge the customer for that 116-ounce smoothie? Do I still keep it at the price of $5? Do I raise the price of the smoothie to $10? Do I keep it the same and hope I can weather this storm of buying avocados at $50 in bulk in hopes that it will come down soon? Or do I charge it and charging $10 for this 16-ounce and run the risk of my customers not wanting to come back anymore, right? And then also, too, in my second most popular smoothie, I have avocados and mangoes in that smoothie. So now mangoes used to cost me $10 in bulk. Now it's costing me $75 in bulk. So now I had to think about, how am I going to order these mangoes? Do I have enough cash on hand or credit on hand in order to buy these mangoes and these avocados, not to be able to I can offset the cost to my customers? Or does it eat into my liquidity? Does it eat into my credit, that I'm using to buy these products for my smoothies? And so that is what we talk about when it comes to being able to forecast, right? Like, how can this business owner who sells smoothies forecast the pricing of his smoothie? How can he forecast the pricing of the supply chain that is needed to fulfill these orders of smoothies from his customers, from their customers, right? And how does it handle the strategy of having cash on hand, being liquid, versus having credit? And that's why I use a small business owner, because small business owners don't have lots of margins to play with, the mom and pop shop. And so this is what we talk about when it talks about like uncertainty that it causes, not only just in the markets, but also too for business owners and small business owners. It has real world impact and real world implications. In particular, because small business owners are the backbone of America, the entrepreneurs. This is especially devastating. The cost of imported materials is going up. So this is why I really leaned into small businesses, because of, they're the backbone of our community. So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, China, they have responded. On Friday, the Chinese Finance Ministry announced that beginning April 10th, they will impose a 34% tariff on all U.S. imports. That's retaliation in full force. And it's not just a blow to corporations, it's a body shot to American farmers, manufacturers, and exporters who depend on access to the Chinese market. This is a global economy in a feedback loop of escalation, and the cost will trickle down, not just to the privilege, but to all working families. And speaking of privilege, jeez, oh Pete, can we talk about Trump's new immigration proposal, the Trump Gold Card? Did you guys see this? He held this gold card, literally a gold card, with his face on it, on Air Force One this week, and made the announcement along with Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. They announced an end to the existing EB-5 investor visa program, replacing it with this new gold card. But here's the catch. It comes with a $5 million price tag. Yeah, $5 million price tag for those wanting to buy their way into the United States. This is being sold as a streamlined route to work status and eventual citizenship. These individuals still need to be vetted. But when the threshold to even apply is $5 million, let's be honest, this isn't about streamlining, it's about stratifying. And it's about codifying privilege. I think about the quote that's etched in the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty that reads, give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. It does not say, give me your wealthy. And that is what I have an issue with. What we're seeing here is a fundamental reframing of who America is for and who it is not. Immigration policy is being used as a mirror for our values. And right now, that mirror reflects gated communities, offshore accounts, and selective access. Not this melting pot idea that America has always been. I can't think about this split screen here of, we're having people being, deported, right? And we can debate, whether or not they should be here or they should not be here. But this idea of such extreme ways of deporting people who typically are not of means, but instead we're offering access to individuals who can pay $5 million. Privilege. It's just this dual screen here. And I want to be clear, this investor program has always been on the books by the way that it's being rebranded and the way that this new price tag is being associated with it. What we're saying is that we value those of wealth. But when you think about all the great innovations that have come from America in science, in medicine, in technology, in business, they come from immigrants who came here on a hope and a dream, who didn't have money, right? And so when we start to place a value on intellect in terms of money and currency and what could be a value add to America, that is a slippery slope. That goes and that is counterintuitive to what our founding fathers wanted for this beautiful country, right? And it's counterintuitive to our democracy. And speaking of democracy, let me pivot a little bit now to our judicial branch, right? And on the state level, which is definitely a reflection on the national level. Wisconsin held its Supreme Court election this week, and while these races are often below the radar, this one broke through in a major way. The results, a clear victory for the progressive candidate. This is big, folks, because the Supreme Court is no mere bench of just people who are just sitting there. It's a political body, whether we like it or not. It rules on everything from gerrymandering to abortion access to election laws within states. With this win, the Democrats now hold a majority on the bench for the first time in over 15 years. And here's why it matters deeply for both parties. In Wisconsin, for Democrats, not even just in Wisconsin, but it's also this is also like a bellwether election for the nation. For Democrats, this is proof that judicial elections can mobilize voters, that issues like reproductive rights and fair maps do bring people to the polls, and it's a potential playbook for the next midterm election. For Republicans, it's a wake-up call. The GOP had dominated judicial races in the state by treating them as stealth battlegrounds, but now the quiet battlefield has become the main event, in particular when Elon Musk has invested in over $20 million of his own money on that race. So this is also a referendum on Elon Musk and President Trump's agenda. When you think about this is the first major contest within the first couple of months of President Trump's administration that has been very active. And so as a result of President Trump being so active in his first few months, this is America. And with Elon Musk being there to close, this is essentially Wisconsin vis-a-vis America, indicating to President Trump that they don't like the direction that his administration is heading in. They don't like the direction that Elon Musk is playing in this administration. And so this was more so a referendum on Elon Musk. Elon Musk was in the state, and also to the Democratic candidate used Elon Musk in her campaign stump speeches and also in literature, campaign literature. So this was very much Elon Musk was on the ballot too as well. Because then we head down to Florida, where two Republican House races, long considered safe red turf, saw something stunning. Their winning margins were cut in half from the last election. Same district, different candidates, but very different outcomes. When you combine the economic instability, the immigration policies that feels elitist and political fatigue from a constant spectacle the news cycle changing every single hour of every single day, you do begin to get erosion. And erosion is powerful. Now, erosion is slow until it's not. These shrinking margins don't guarantee a blue wave come the midterm, but they do signify voter validity. And it means that voters are no longer dealing with lockdown loyalties, right? Voters are moving. They're questioning. They're open to being persuaded, or open to staying at home. That just signals to both parties it's time to talk to voters and not at them. So with that being said, folks, it has been a busy week. So much more to unpack, and I cannot wait to rock with you guys all this week to continue this conversation and continually unpack everything that I just discussed here with you all. I love rocking with y'all. You guys are literally the best audience. I love when you guys come up to me in the streets, in the airport. It means a lot. I was active this week, so I saw a lot of you guys this week, and it made me smile. So thank you to everyone who came up to me. It's good rocking with you. And also, too, some of you guys are supposed to tag me in the pictures. You haven't tagged me in the pictures, so make sure you tag me in your pictures. But coming up next, I have a very, very special guest from the movie Hell of a Summer, Fred Heschinger. He rocked with us for the Gladiator 2 Town Hall, and you guys know he was just such an incredible conversation. But I cannot wait to talk with him on the other side, so stay right there. Be right back.